Mr. Commissioner, great to have you. Good morning.
Good to join you. Thank you.
So the agency has looked at this actually several years ago, and there was a deal brokered that you say the White House walked away from. What specifically do you think they've gotten wrong?
Well, look, 2 years ago, the FCC, the expert agency charged by Congress with making exactly these types of determinations about the coexistence of 5G and air safety, reached a decision based on the science, based on sound engineering, and real-world experience. 5G is live in nearly 40 countries. And look, this is frankly part and parcel of a broader problem that we're seeing within the Biden administration of chaotic decision-making. At first they came out and said there's no problem, nothing to worry about. Then at the last minute, they started running around, seemingly reaching for duct tape and baling wire to concoct some sort of solution. Then they issued press statements saying they solved the problem. And the American people can see that they haven't. 5G sites are laying fallow right now, and Americans are stranded as flights continue to be grounded. So I think this is a problem of a lack of strong and competent leadership and the failure of the Biden administration to stick with the science and sound engineering.
Do you believe that the air carriers and the airports' concerns about the altimeter on the 777 are illegitimate?
Yeah, I do. And here's why. For one, there's a process that the FCC runs where they put in their engineering studies, and the experts at the FCC that deal with this type of stuff every single day look at it, and their studies were fundamentally flawed. But beyond academic papers, we have real-world experience. The carriers at the end of the day agreed to confine their 5G operations to essentially the exact same environment that exists today in France, where U.S. aircrafts are flying in and out every day without any issues, without any flight restrictions. So it boggles my mind that we aren't able to do in the U.S. the exact same thing that happens in France, which is have great 5G, connect Americans, lead the world in this type of service, and also maintain aviation safety.
Yeah, Commissioner Carr, I mean, the argument you're making is that this is an issue around process rather than the technology and uncertainty around the technology. That being said, I mean, there are different wavelengths of spectrum that are associated with 5G. The counter argument has been that this is the so-called Goldilocks band, that this is wavelengths that are being deployed that maybe have not been deployed in other countries. Is that actually the case? I mean, talk to the technology itself.
No, not at all. So look, when the FCC looked at this, the aviation interests at first said they needed what's called a 100 megahertz guard band, a physical spectral separation from 5G in the U.S. and radio altimeters. At the FCC, we ended up putting a 200 megahertz guard band in place, double what aviation interests originally put forward. And then now, what we're talking about here, this initial light up of 5G, is an additional 200 megahertz away from radio altimeter. So 400 megahertz away. And again, at the end of the day, the process was going to be to deploy consistent with what exists in terms of an RF spectrum environment in France today, where thousands of planes are landing and taking off without issue. Unfortunately, this is part of a broader trend we're seeing where agencies that don't like the process that Congress put in place for adjudicating these issues, they don't like the outcome, they start going around and outside of the process. We've seen this at the FCC in 24 gigahertz, where NOAA weather radar entities claim that you wouldn't be able to get the weather anymore after the FCC's decision. We saw it in 5.9 when the FCC issued a decision, and the Department of Transportation back then said that it was going to result in more car crashes. It didn't. I mean, I've been at the FCC for 10 years. I've lived through a lot of Y2K moments in tech policy, and this is another one. But instead of sticking with the process, the good process, late last year, the Biden administration veered course, and it invited the type of manipulation that we saw by entities that spread misinformation because they knew or they betted on the administration would cave, and they did, and that's not a good deal. And frankly, look, I mean, you can dispute whether this is a good or a bad outcome for Verizon or AT&T in terms of the specifics of the deal, and frankly, I don't personally know all the specifics yet, but to me, it's the broader message that this sends, which is American competitive and leadership needs competent decision-making. We didn't see that here.